The reason that hair discrimination is a thing is because we have, as a society, been taught, and I believe this stems from colonialism, that black hair is naturally unkempt or dirty. The work that companies like this or creators like this are doing is so important because hair representation matters. And so important to be seen just for who we are and to feel included in the media that we consume. Hey everyone, it's Asmara. Long time no see. But today I want to talk a little bit about hair representation in gaming. So this was recently brought to my attention. Dark and Lovely, the black hair care brand, recently partnered up with Ebonics, who is a Sims 4 content creator. But honestly, she's so much more than that. She's done so much work to progress representation in gaming. I know she recently presented an award at the BAFTA Awards. I'm pretty sure her custom content is in like an art gallery in Italy. Like, she's a big deal. But Dark and Lovely partnered with Ebonics in The Sims 4 to bring some new hair colors to a couple of Afro-textured styles in the game. And alongside this base game update, Ebonics also dropped 6 new hairstyles that are free to download on her website in those Dark and Lovely colors once again. And if I'm understanding the timeline correctly, in July, The Sims is going to release another base game update with a new locked hairstyle that comes in natural colors as well as the Dark and Lovely colors. This is all part of Dark and Lovely's Play in Color campaign, which is aimed towards championing diverse voices in gaming. And I was watching some content around this campaign, and it honestly just warmed my heart to see all of the conversations being had about hair representation in video games. And so it's something I just kind of wanted to pop in here and talk a little bit about why this is so important and why Black women's hair is so much more than just hair. Not to mention that Ebonics also released her kit with The Sims 4. It's the Urban Homage Kit, which is another nod to Black culture, her culture. I'm pretty sure Ebonics is Nigerian, if I'm not mistaken. But that's not a part of the Play in Color campaign, but all of these things kind of unfolded around the same time. But back to my point. So for those of you who are not familiar about a history of Black people's hair, it's important to know for starters that Black people's hair is not just hair. It's a big part of our culture, and it has been for centuries. In Africa, hair often told your story, who you were as a person. Your hairstyle could represent your marital status, your religion, or your spirituality. It could represent your age, your class. Different elements of hairstyles meant different things in varying African cultures. When slavery happened, one thing that enslavers did was shave Black people's hair. It was one of the many things they did to strip the enslaved of their culture, of their heritage, of anything that made them them. Sometimes these colonizers would mock Black people's hair, saying that it looked dirty and unkempt, even comparing Black people's hair to pubic hair. But despite this type of dehumanization, Black people have continued to be innovative with their hairstyles, even throughout the limitations of slavery and segregation. I understand I have a diverse audience here, but like cornrows are like the braids that are directly on the scalp. They usually go straight back, but some people throughout slavery would actually use the pattern of the cornrows to show people how to escape to freedom. And actually, in 1789, the governor of Louisiana, by law, required all Black women enslaved or free to cover their hair to signify themselves as part of the slave class. Again, this was done for people who were enslaved and also people who were free. One of the governor's concerns is that the way Black women would adorn their hair with like feathers and jewels and braids, like the elaborate styles that they would do, he thought was overshadowing the beauty of white women. And he thought that these Black people are starting to look a lot more wealthy than they actually are because of the way that they would dress and style their hair. So this was literally a law that was passed in this country to have Black women cover their hair so that they wouldn't be seen as a threat. But Black women, because you know, we've been fly since the beginning of time, use these hair coverings as another way of self-expression. And head wraps are a huge part in a lot of different African cultures to this day. So that's a bit of a history about some of the things that Black people in the United States have gone through when it comes to our hair. But even to this day, like hair salons and barbershops are big pillars of Black communities. Getting your hair done is not just about looking fly, but these spaces have oftentimes been a place for community and connection. If you ask basically any Black person living out in the West, they can probably tell you about the types of things that go down in beauty salons or barbershops, the type of connections that are made there, the hours, especially if you're a woman, you spend sitting in a salon chair, really developing a close relationship to the person doing your hair. I know just for me, I've been going to the same hairdresser for the past 11 years. I'm 22, so I've been going to my same hairdresser literally for half of my life. She's known me for half of my life. And I go to some other people to get my hair braided, but like my main hairdresser, girl, she has watched me grown up. So these communities, these spaces where we get our hair done is so much more than just about looking fly, you know? Most Black people can tell you some fond memory or stories about getting their hair done. So I feel like this collaboration with Dark and Lovely, Ebonics, and The Sims 4 is significant because The Sims 4 has gone through quite the journey when it comes to representation, especially Black representation. Might I give you a brief history about the skin tones? So when Sims 4 was initially released back in 2014, the base game released with a set of 25 skin tone swatches, and 9 of those colors were unnatural colors, like green and red and blue and gray. So in actuality, we had more like 16 actual skin colors. And the darker swatches were gray, ashy, just not rich and melanated. They just did not look very good. Fast forward 4 years later in 2018, the Sims 4 team added 10 more darker skin tone swatches. Ooh. But they were still gray, they were still ashy. So the same problem was still there. It was just now we have more ashy skin tones. And then moving into 2020, as we know, a lot of conversations, especially that summer, were being had about Black Lives Matter and the many ways that companies can show that they care about Black lives. And this was kind of around the time that the Sims community online was being more vocal about the fact that diversity, especially for Black Sims, is severely lacking in a game whose sole purpose is meant to simulate life. Since the launch of the game in 2014, Black Simmers have been talking about the ashy gray skin tones and the bad base game Afro textured hairstyles that just didn't have the same care and love put into them as the white hairstyles did. So this is the year where EA actually started to take, the feedback seriously. And in December of that year, they released a skin tone update that released over 100 plus skin tone swatches with sliders. So you can select your undertone and then use the slider to choose how bright or dark your skin tone is. And you can also save certain skin tone swatches so you can make your own custom skin tones. This update was done in collaboration with a lot of the people who have been pioneering sort of this "we need diversity in The Sims 4" conversation, such as Ebonics. X Mirror Mirror was another creator, and I forget the other creators, but they did collaborate with different creators of different backgrounds to really try to get this skin tone issue right. This update also featured sliders for makeup, because if you know anything about real life, you can't just use the same makeup products on everybody with different skin tones. It's going to show up differently depending how pigmented your skin is. So another thing this update featured was makeup sliders. So you could change how vibrant or opaque the different blushes, eyeshadows, or lipsticks are. This was just the beginning of very much needed updates in The Sims 4. A year later, in 2021, The Sims 4 fixed the base game Afro, which was atrocious when The Sims 4 first came out. I'll put the before and after on the screen. And throughout this time, like from 2020, they've been doing like little, patches and updates here and there to fix the textures of the Afro textured hairstyles, the limited styles that there were in game. Again, this was in collaboration with a lot of the literal game changers that we've discussed. In February 2022, The Sims 4 partnered up with Complex Sims, where he added bonnets and do-rags to The Sims 4 base game. This was a big win for us Black players in the Sims community. Bonnets, do-rags, protective scarves, like these are all things that we use to protect our protective styles or our natural hair from getting frizzy. Because girl, we ain't paying hundreds of dollars for hairstyles just for it to get messed up up the next day. So it was just really cool to see that really big part of Black hair and Black culture now represented in The Sims 4, not just as a DLC, paywall feature, but as part of the actual game. And fast forward to today, in May of 2024, Dark and Lovely launched their Play in Color campaign. And one of the things they are doing for that campaign, as we've already talked about, is bringing some Dark and Lovely colors to a couple of Afro textured hairstyles in The Sims 4. They're doing this in partnership with Ebonics. So if I take you over here, these hairstyles that you see on the right, these Afro puffs and these braids are the two base game hairs that they are adding these Dark and Lovely colors to, or they're already done, so they're in your game right now. And then if you come on over to Ebonics' website, you can see her 6 custom content hairs that she created, which are free to download. So y'all see these popping colors and styles. So I know she worked really hard to, make these gorgeous colors and styles for us. And these right here are the new Dark and Lovely colors. So they have their bleach kit, they have virtual violet, reality red, and poppin' pink. These are the colors kind of featured in this Play in Color campaign. So I just think it's so cool and heartwarming that this company, Dark and Lovely, that has been championing Black women in beauty, is collaborating with something like The Sims and Ebonics, such an iconic, face of this creator community, to talk about hair representation in video games and why it's important. There's a great video that they released when this campaign launched, so I'll be sure to link it in the description. And Ebonics has some great talking points about how Blackness was not seen as the beauty standard when she was growing up. Black people, if you did see them in video games, they weren't often represented well or in a way that was authentic that we can see ourselves in. And so it's really cool to see like mainstream companies that aren't gaming companies necessarily talk about the fact that Black people play games and the fact that we deserve to be seen in these spaces. Like we already talked about, Black hair is a big part of our culture and identity. It, traces back to our roots in Africa, but it continues to be a staple of our community and our culture today. And hair representation is so important because people are still being discriminated against today for wearing their hair in natural styles. If you're not familiar with the Crown Act, CROWN stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. The Crown Act was created to end race-based hair discrimination in work and in schools. It started off as the Crown Coalition, which was created by Essie Eggleston, I believe is her name. Eggleston. Something like that. So she partnered with some attorneys to make the Crown Coalition and eventually the Crown Act happen. The first Crown Act was passed in California in 2019 because in many places in this country, Black women, Black men, Black girls, and Black boys are being sent home from work in school because they're told that their hair violates the dress code or is unprofessional. In some spaces, if you walk in with an afro, you're told that your hair is not professional and, ooh, girl, you need to do something with that. You're taking up too much space. People who go to work or go to school wearing dreadlocks or braids are being forced to take out their hair to receive an education or get their job done. Which if you look into any cases in particular, which I'll link a couple in the description, you'll see how unfair the policies are, and they're not enforcing these same policies for white people. We're not told that white people's hair is distracting, but all of a sudden we have Black people, and because they have their hair in dreadlocks or braids, they all of a sudden can't receive an education or do their job because it's a distraction or you think it's unprofessional. Like the rules aren't making sense, Your internalized racism is popping out. So because hair discrimination is a real thing, there's a whole act and a petition to get the Crown Act passed in all 50 states. You can actually go to dove.com/crown and they have a whole page that explains kind of what they're doing and what the Crown Act is. If you look at this graphic, which my face is kind of covering a little bit, but you can see the states where the Crown Act is law, where the legislation is filed or been pre-filed, and where the legislation has not been filed. So this is something great to look at, and it's just a great resource for more information about the Crown Act. And this kind of brings me back to my point, which is why collaborations such as Dark and Lovely partnering with The Sims and Ebonics to make, black hair normalized in video games, like the work that companies like this or creators like this are doing is so important because hair representation matters. The reason that hair discrimination is a thing is because we have, as a society, been taught, and I believe this stems from colonialism, that black hair is naturally unkempt or dirty or not professional. Like, these are things that people have been saying since, colonization, and there's still beliefs that permeate into our culture today. The reason people are being denied education or being sent home from work because of their hair is due to these beliefs that are not based on fact. And if we had more representation of Black people in professional spaces, wearing their dreadlocks and wearing their braids and their afros and just the way that your hair naturally grows out of your head, if we're normalized seeing not only Black professionals, but Black kids in school with natural hair, like, we wouldn't have to have an act that bans people from being able to discriminate against people for wearing natural hair, if that makes sense. Hopefully y'all are following me. So this is why hair representation is so important, and video games being a form of media that we consume is just as important to consider when we're having these conversations about representation. Of course, TV and media is important, but video games is important too. A lot of people play video games of all different ages, and if we can see in the more places that we can see, authentic representation, the better. We're only creating a more inclusive world if we look at all of our forms of media and how it influences our thinking. This actually reminds me, not too long ago, there was this headshot that went viral. There is this young man who worked at NASA, and he took his, official NASA headshot, and he had dreadlocks, and that went viral. And the big conversation around that is that proving that our hair is professional. I want to find this now. His name is Tyrone Jacobs Jr. Let me bring you guys over here. So this is his headshot right here. This is the headshot that went viral. And it's so great just to see these conversations finally being had and brought to the forefront. Like, if you can work at NASA and have hair like this, it's changing the narrative of what we think professional hair looks like. Hair representation, whether it's this guy working at NASA or it's in The Sims 4 or other video games, like, the reason this is so important is because regardless of the medium, it's contributing to our perception of Black hair, but in a positive way. It's rewriting our own story about what our hair means and what Black hair can look like and what a Black professional can look like and what a Black student can look like. So yeah, that's my little video about hair representation in gaming. I just wanted to come on here and talk about this because I saw this campaign and it really warmed my heart. Like, I feel just like, I don't know, like a proud mother when I saw the news that Ebonics had to work with The Sims 4 and Dark and Lovely, and just all the work that Ebonics has done throughout her career. I was reading about it as I was doing, a bit of research for this video. I'm just really proud that folks are out here like making a difference in gaming, but in media at large. Because really what we're talking about video games, we're talking about media. And everybody consumes media, So video games is just as important of a medium to talk about these topics. A couple of other video games that were big for representation, at least with Black hairstyles. One of the first things that came to mind was Spider-Man Miles Morales. I remember how crazy folks was going when that game dropped. People were talking about, his lineup, how crispy it was. People were talking about how they represented Miles's culture, being Afro-Latino, Puerto Rican, and Black, how he, spoke to his mom in Spanish. And the game talked about, him going to the bodega and just, the little nuances that come with being represented. Like, I just remember how warm and fuzzy I felt when that game dropped, and a lot of the creators that I watch having such a heartwarming reaction to it. I actually watched Christology play through Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I loved watching her play through it because she is also Black and Puerto Rican, just like Miles, and so it was cool to kind of see her react to seeing her culture represented, and I just thought that was really cool.
Oh my god, Y'all, I was gonna cry in the beginning because, bro, that representation feels different, bro. It feels different. I didn't know how good it felt until I had it.
Just like little things like that, just like I love seeing people feel seen and represented with that game. Another conversation I remember is the black hairstyles in Hogwarts Legacy. And I know different people have different opinions about Hogwarts Legacy and whether or not we should be supporting it, but that's not what this video in particular is about. But I did love seeing those conversations about the hairstyles that were featured, the black hairstyles in particular, and how they weren't just, neck braids that are 4 inches apart, and, bad textured afros. Like they actually took the time to make the curls like look like curls, look like us. And they had a couple of different styles as well. Even the dreadlock style they had looked like they put care into it. I also recently came across this video on my Instagram feed about this creator named Jasmine who creates black and afro textured hairstyles for Roblox. And it got me down a rabbit hole looking at like all these poppin' black styles that people are making and how important it is that we have, people in all types of gaming spaces trying to make a difference in hair representation because we understand that it does matter. I can link the original video I watched down below. Anyways, so that's just what I wanted to talk about today. A little bit about why hair representation is so important. For Black people, for the Black community, hair is not just about beauty. It's not just about looking fly, but it's a big part of our culture, and being seen is so important. When game companies acknowledge you, when your school or your job can actually see you for you and know that you are more than just your hair, it's so important that people don't like tokenize the Black girl with the black hair, or everybody kind of looks at you like it's a spectacle if you wear your hair in an afro or in dreadlocks or whatever the case may be. It's important that we see Black people as just normal and that we have value, no matter the way our hair is styled. It's important that we're not looked at like some spectacle because our hair does not abide by white beauty standards. Hair is not just about beauty, but it's about belonging. And so important to be seen just for who we are and to feel included in the media that we consume. Let me know your thoughts about the Dark and Lovely Ebonics Playing Color collab. This story really warmed my heart, so I wanted to share it with you and also provide a little bit of education about why hair representation is so important. If you're Black, feel free to share your stories in the comments below about your experience with hair representation in gaming, if you choose to do so, of course. But I want to continue having this conversation. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. My name is Asmara. I actually am working on a video essay. I've been talking a little bit about it over on Instagram, so if you're not following me over there, go follow me. So that is actually in the works right now, but I thought I would throw up this video in the meantime until I can finish that one. With that being said, that's all I have for you today. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. My name is Asmara, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye y'all.